Brian here with Dark Rangers Inc. And today we're going to do my review of the Stellarvue SVX140T. Now, if you recall from some of my past scope review videos, I spent a chunk of each of those going over what it took to get the scope actually up and running. With the SCA 260 being a large reflector, I had to get it collimated and a bunch of other issues, check that out. And then with the William Optic Pleiades 111, we had issues with backspace, and so I went through my struggle with that. So I thought I'd take the time that I normally spend getting the scope up and running, because in this case, all I had to do is slap a camera on it and go, going over what are the things that you should look at when buying an apochromatic refractor and how I ultimately arrived at Stellarvue for my next choice. So I figured I would start with the overview of what I look for, and that will kind of lead into our discussion of the 140 and some of the things I think you should look out for when you're purchasing your next refractor. The first thing that I look at, and it's not necessarily in order of importance, is glass quality. Are they using either fluorite or a premium fluorite synthetic like FPL 53, 55, or FCD 100? If you're looking at a scope and they don't mention what glass it is, it's likely because it's not a premium option. I've never seen a company use a top of the line glass and not brag about it in the spec sheet. This is one of the reasons I don't recommend some of the most popular options out there, like Ascar, for example. In their FRA and PHQ lineup, they don't tell you what glass they're using. Now, in their sister company Sharpstar with the Z4, which is arguably probably one of their most premium refractors, given the price per size of the scope, they do tell you that they use FCD 100 glass, which backs up the thought process that if they were using it in their other scopes, they would let you know. The next thing I look for is, do they have a customer service number that I can actually call and talk to somebody who has hands on the scope during the manufacturing process? Not just a general customer service number who can answer the same questions that I could answer by reading the spec sheet online, but somebody that's actually involved in the scope making. Can I get a hold of one of those people easily? If the answer is no, then they're automatically off the list. Same with if they're not listing what glass they're using. Those are immediate eliminations. And that's kind of what I do to start. I basically have a deductive process where I'm eliminating options and then narrowing it down to a final few that maybe have all of the qualities I'm looking for. And then I just base it strictly on value. Where am I getting the most bang for my buck? Now, if they're using good glass and they have a customer service number to call, I then typically start to look at some of the ancillary hardware and features of the scope. Do they use a nice focuser? The Feather Touch 3.5 inch on the 140 is a very high-end top-of-the-line focuser, but even their in-house 3-inch Stellarvue focuser is also really nice. Do they use decent hardware, and do they have, nice dovetails, nice rings, a solid scope cap, a retractable dew shield, have a screw to lock out the retractable dew shield, something that can rotate the camera, whether it's the whole focuser itself or just a camera rotator on the end. Some of those little ancillary features are nice to have, but not necessarily a must-have. Next on the list, and probably more importantly, is do they test each scope before it leaves the factory? So this is using a laser interferometer to check for astigmatism, coma, things of that nature, and a double pass auto collimation tool that lets you know that everything is perfectly lined up and your color correction is going to be solid. There are many mainstream options that do not test either of these before they leave the factory. So if it doesn't give you a report that tells you the Strel, or there isn't a minimum guaranteed Strel ratio, then that's a sign that they may not even be testing, and then it's just a matter of luck. It's just another level of assurance that you're going to have a high quality scope and that they're taking it apart in terms of the glass and fine tuning it and putting it back together multiple times. So in the case of the 140 in Stellarvue, they are polishing the glass, testing it, making sure that it's perfect. If it's not, they're taking it back out, repolishing it, and getting it perfectly collimated in a way that not only is going to be super stable, but if adjustments need to be made because of slight tilt in sensor on your camera or things like that, they can fine tune it to perfection and match all of that up. Another thing I look at is how long have they been in business, and do they make the scopes in-house? So is this just a brand that ultimately sends out the specs that they want to one of the manufacturing companies in China and Taiwan, and they have them put together with no real direct oversight? Maybe they get some samples sent out every once in a while. Or is the owner of the company or the people involved in making the decisions on the scope actually making the scopes in-house, have their hands on it, and are a part of the process? Have they been doing it for a long time? Has this company been in business for a while? Is it reputable? Do they have a history of making good scopes that are reliable, that last, and will be something that you can enjoy for years to come? Now, once you found a small group of companies that have the size and spec that you're looking for and follow all of these practices, premium glass, they're made in-house, they have customer service that you can rely on, they test all their scopes one at a time, they have all the nice features, it's really a matter of limiting it down to the company that you're going to work with. And to do that, I start to look at value and price. We are now in premium scope territory. The number of companies that are going to be doing all of those things to ensure you have a beautiful handcrafted scope that you can use for decades to come is small. But there are some that are still priced a little bit more in reach than others. It would be really easy for me to say, yeah, get a Takahashi or Astrophysics or TEC, they're great scopes. But I was looking for an option that brought a lot of those quality characteristics into the mix, but at a price that was a little bit more affordable. And that's where Stellarvue was really the perfect fit in my eyes. Now, I know the 140 that we're talking about is not inexpensive, but most 140s or 150s aren't. It's an expensive category of scopes. APOs don't go up on a linear price scale. It very much is exponential. So the distance between an 80 to 100 is going to be smaller than the gap between 100 to 120. As the scope gets bigger, every additional millimeter is costing you more and more and more. So if you are interested in a premium scope, I would look at the smaller lineup of any company that you've narrowed it down, because at the 80 and 90 millimeter version, I was very surprised to see that Stellarvue is actually priced pretty close to some of the mass manufactured mainstream options. And with that point, it kind of brings us full circle as to why I chose Stellarvue as my next main scope and kind of the scope for the channel, because it combines all of those premium characteristics that I'm looking for and puts it together at a price that's in the same ballpark as many of the popular options that are out there. So I know a lot of you guys are looking at Skywatcher and William Optics and Ascar and some of these scopes, which, again, a lot of them are great scopes, but I thought, why not try to find something that's a little bit of a hidden gem that gets more of those premium scope characteristics in there at a price that's approachable for a larger percentage of my audience. So with that, let's jump outside. Let's take a look at the scope and the characteristics, and then we'll review some data and go over how it's been imaging thus far. All right, well, here we have it outside. This is our 140. If you've watched the G11 review, then you've briefly seen this, so it's not the first time. As with any larger APO, it's always much larger in person than it looks like online or on photos. When it came originally in its package, I couldn't believe how big it was, especially the size of the giant field flattener. The diameter of that thing is absolutely crazy, and that allows it to have a 60 millimeter imaging circle, which is far beyond full frame. So if you are using a full frame camera, you know that you have some cushion to work with, and the scope does really well at full frame all the way to the corners, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, it does come standard with some really nice hardware that I'll show you inside. It has the laser etched SV logo on the knobs, which is really tough to actually swap out, but Prima Luce was nice enough to send out some hardware with their Eagle and the Sesto Senso, so I did decide to swap it out. If you want to go this route, you do need 30 millimeter risers to go ahead and bottom mount the Eagle. The nice thing is if you get the exact same rings I have inside, which I'll show you, they actually have a built-in riser system, and it was the perfect fit for the Eagle. So right from the factory, it was ready to bottom mount, which was a super slick look and design. As I mentioned, inside this does have the 3.5-inch feather touch focuser, so we'll go ahead and zoom in on that. All right, we'll go ahead and take a look at the coarse side, since I have the fine side used for the Prima Luce Sesto Senso. If you do get the feather touch option, you need the 37 millimeter adapter for the Sesto. Otherwise, if you get the 3-inch Stellarvue focuser that would come standard with it, the Sesto has a 25 millimeter adapter that comes with it, and that will fit perfectly. The focuser is unlike anything I've ever used. It is so butterly smooth. Even like the difference between this and some of the other, you know, kind of higher tier premium scopes that I've used in the past, this is just so silky smooth. Even the coarse side, there's a little bit of resistance, of course, because there's so many fine-tooth gears in there to prevent backlash, but it just feels like there's absolutely nothing in there providing any additional friction. It's really incredible. And then on the fine side, it is out of this world because it's got a 10-to-1 reduction. So when you're turning the fine side, it's barely moving it, and it just feels so nice to actually use. It's kind of sad to put an electronic autofocus on there, but we need something monitoring focus throughout the night. So if you are using this for visual and manually focusing, it will be an absolute treat. You can actually rotate the camera by loosening. It kind of looks like a captain's wheel on a ship. So you turn this to the left, and then you can rotate the entire focuser basically from here back and then tighten it down. And so that gives you the ability to rotate the camera. I have the camera rotator already on there. That's motorized. So I don't have to do that, but you don't have to add a camera rotator if you don't want to, because you have the ability to rotate everything as it comes. So we'll go ahead and give you a view from back to front. Here is that massive field flattener. A reducer, like I said, is on the way. It does have an area for you to hook up some kind of guide scope or finder scope. We've got the way to tighten or loosen the focuser that I mentioned. And then going all the way up, we've got the nice Stellarvue logo here on top. And this dew shield, of course, is adjustable, and you can put a screw in there to tension it down if you want. So that's kind of an overall look. Let's jump inside because I do want to show you the case and the original hardware as well. As I mentioned, it did come out in this really nice SKB case. It's very similar to a Pelican, and you guys have heard me preach quite a bit about the importance of keeping your scope safe and using cases like this. The nice thing is it came yesterday, the actual custom foam cutout. So you can have your case come with this, and it's all laser cut, and it will perfectly encapsulate the scope and keep it safe. Here are the standard rings and furniture that I was talking about. As you can see, it has the nice SV logo, and he did send it with these risers so that the Eagle can actually fit right underneath, or whatever computer or operating system you're running. It even has some screws up top to mount another dovetail bar across the top. And there is a handle in development as well that will give you a lot of attachment options and things to make life a little bit easier. The scope cap, pretty standard, nothing too crazy there. Just your standard scope cap. We don't have it on because we're using the G-Auto flat panel. But I really would highly recommend the case. I actually like these a little bit more than Pelican because I like the spring-loaded locking latches. So they're on the side that you actually flip up, so you don't have to like hold a button on the outside and then flip it up with your thumb. It's spring-loaded right in there, so it does lock, but it allows you to just use one hand or one finger to pop it open. All right, now that we've taken a look outside at the physical characteristics of the scope, we obviously do need to look at some data. I have a couple unfinished master lights and then a couple of finished pieces as well. So here we have M101, and all of these images I shot with no flats just to expose any vignetting or issues. I did crop this in a little bit, obviously, because of the stacking artifacts. I shot it over basically the entire month, so there was some rotational errors that were kind of my fault. And then all I've done is run gradient correct on them because I didn't do flats. But even if we go ahead and back that step up, it's actually pretty crazy how good of a job this scope does handling the gradient, even when shot over, you know, basically anything from a full moon to a new moon. If we just undo that, and I just did standard settings, so I didn't really do anything special, but it basically completely gets rid of them. And so I decided to shoot with no calibration frames just kind of as a torture test and, you know, really just show any issues that the scope might have. If we do kind of zoom in, obviously this is a small galaxy, but this is the luminance layer. The detail is holding up really nice. We could, you know, crop in quite a bit. We can see some of the swirls from the galaxy arms, and, you know, to me, it looks really great. I don't have another scope of the exact same focal length to kind of compare it with, but when I look at data from previous years with other scopes that aren't maybe the same focal length, it's, you know, quite a bit sharper. The one thing that you can look at to objectively define how sharp a scope is in terms of the stars is the full width half maximum value. Now, the one thing about that is it's very sky dependent, but since I have 3 scopes going at the same time each night, I do point them sometimes at the same target and test. And one thing I will say that this scope does amazing with that is its full width half maximum. I'm getting all the way down into the 1.6, low 1.7 range, when another scope with the same filter, same camera pointing at the same target will get something like maybe 2, 2.1, 2.2. And now the difference between, you know, like 1.70 and 2.1 doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is a pretty significant gap in sharpness of the stars. So the full width half maximum performance on this scope is the best of anything I've used in my backyard. And I tried to keep the comparison as fair as possible by using, you know, as much of the same components as I could. And even with that, it consistently does outperform several of the other scopes that I've used it with on the same nights in the backyard. So this is my M101 data. It did make galaxy season a little bit more fun. We can look at something where we can get a little bit more detail in the flaming star. I haven't even cropped this data, so this is absolutely no edits of any kind, not even cropped. And you can see still, like, this area is supposed to be lighter because of the HA gas, and then this is obviously, there's none here, so it's darker. So this really isn't a light to dark gradient. There just is, as you can see, there's S2 gas there, and then it's darker over here as well. The detail in this is really cool. Like when you zoom in, there are so many little structures that, you know, I just haven't been able to get, partly in all fairness because of focal length, but man, just like when these subframes came in, they just look so cool. All these little columns of gases. And again, how sharp the stars are. We have no blur exterminator or anything like that run. And you can see these stars are just absolutely pinpoint all the way to the edge of the frame. So if we go all the way out to the corners, we can see that it does not change. The S2 data, and this is only about 2 hours per filter, shot right around, I think it was between an 83% and a full moon. But same thing, just really nice, sharp detail, given the fact that it was during a full moon and without a lot of data per channel. Now, the M101 does have quite a bit of data, just to be you know, fully transparent. I've got about 10 hours of loom and then 5, 5, and 5. But it was shot over the entire month over a bunch of different conditions in terms of the moon. So jumping into some finished images, here we have M81 and M82. I was able to start to get some of the IFN to show, which is the first time that I've ever done that, which is really cool, including some of the blue nebula detail over here, which was nice. This is an HA-LRGB, which I'm still trying to perfect, but I think I did a decent job combining the HA data and blending it nicely. Using some continuum subtraction so it wasn't showing up in the core, but we can see the nice HA jets there. And again, stars sharp all the way around. Here is that flaming star nebula finished. Just such great color and richness to the data. There's just something, you know, especially with the nebula, I don't know how to describe it, but there's just this like X factor to it that, you know, when you use a really nice scope, it really just gives it a little extra wow factor to it. So I was really excited again with this one only having about 6 hours of total data. I was really pumped with how the result came out. You know, some people might say, oh, f6.7, even though it is fast for a large APO, they might think it's kind of slow. But again, 2 hours per filter on near full moon conditions. And you can see, you know, you can get a great image. So from an actual real world optics perspective, all of that quality and characteristics that go into making the good scope does actually show up when it comes time to actually image and, you know, get a great result with the data that you have. It's been a lot of fun to use the scope, and I look forward to continue to put out more projects. Follow me on Instagram. I'll continue to post the projects as they come out there, including the final version of M101. I do have some HA data for this as well, so I'll do another HA-LRGB combination. So that's a quick overview of the data, and let's go ahead and wrap it up with my final thoughts and recommendations. All right, now that we've gone over the physical characteristics and some of the data, as well as all the metrics that went into why I chose this particular scope, what are my overall thoughts? The first thing that I really like to stress, and why I was able to add the buyer's guide in, is how easy the scope has been to use. As I said in the beginning, I literally was able to just slap a camera on and go. This scope does have a little bit over 90 millimeters of backspace available to you, which is nice because when I added the rotator, I needed more than 55. But it does come with a 40 millimeter spacer so that you are set up for 55. If you need more than that, you can just let Vic know and he will send out a spacer that's going to be set up for the exact backspace that you need. So you have a lot more room to play with than some of the more mainstream typical options out there. If you do want to add a rotator, or let's say you have an OAG and an electronic filter wheel that are mismatched brands, so they're at 58 millimeters instead of 55, you've got a lot of flexibility there. One thing I was a little interested to see, because even though this is the faster version of their lineup at f6.7, was I'm used to using scopes closer to the f5 range. Now, the f-stop is really just the focal length divided by the aperture. It really doesn't take into play characteristics about light transmission or stuff like that. And I don't know if it's because of the quality of the glass or the clarity of it, but as you can see, I was really surprised when I saw that just 2 hours per channel with the Flaming Star did such a great job really showing all of that detail. I was worried that, man, I'm going to have to give a lot more time for each project because it is slower than the smaller scopes that I'm used to using, but I found that that really is not the case. Then when you add in how sharp it is and how well it handles different moon conditions, even without flats, how little gradient there is in the image, and just how pinpoint those stars are, it just makes it easier to edit and get to a final image faster without having to worry about doing as much correction and sharpening as I do with other scopes. If you are somebody that's looking for more of a mid-size APO, I have some good news for you. A 102 is coming out. The native focal length is 714 millimeters, but it also has a reducer flattener that makes it the perfect focal length for summer nebula season. It's going to come with the same SKB case and the laser cut foam insert. This one's going to be in carbon fiber, so it's super cool, and it's going to have both the flattener and the reducer. Now, the nice thing is I'm going to use it for a few months, do a review on it so we know it's going to be in great condition, and then we're going to offer it up for sale at a discount. So if you are interested in getting more of a premium scope, but don't need something as large as the 140, you might be able to pick out a fully decked out setup and get it and save a couple dollars in the process. So if that's something that you're interested in, hit me up at ryan@darkrangersinc.com. If you are looking for a premium larger APO that's priced well and has a little bit of additional speed with the promise of more speed to come, the 140 is an easy recommend. Of all the products I've had the opportunity to test, it has by far been the easiest to use and given me the biggest jump in results. It's just been awesome. It's like switching from color to mono. It's just brought that excitement back and made it a lot of fun to do astrophotography again. And I just want to clarify one thing in terms of what these partnerships are. I think maybe that's a word that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I think about 99% of you get it, but there's a small percentage of you that maybe don't. Partnership to me in this situation is not a business relationship in any sense of the word. It is a handshake agreement where I say, hey, look, I've got a community of people that I want to recommend the best possible gear for the value, and I want you to take care of them after the fact. If you're willing to uphold that and take some of our feedback, then I'm happy to recommend your products. But this is really more me and you guys versus them. them and giving us a community buying power situation to where we have a little bit more accountability than you do as an individual. If you have a problem, you can reach out to me and I'm happy to, be a little bit more squeaky of a wheel to get something done if anything does happen with you and you're not able to get the service you want. I don't think that that's something that you're ever going to deal with, but you know that you have the channel to fall back on a little bit, and they are okay with that and want to get our feedback. If there were negative aspects of the scope, I promise you I would point them out. I just really haven't found any yet. And if I do, I'll be happy to update. And I know that Vic would be more than okay with me reporting any issues with the scope, and he'd be happy to fix them as well. So I just wanted to clarify what I meant by partnering with these companies. This is a handshake agreement to say, look, take care of my people, and I'm happy to test, review, and show my findings with this community as long as you guys take care of them in the long run. That's all it is. I chose these companies. They didn't reach out to me. I did a ton of research and said, where would I vote with my dollar? What companies would I choose? And these are the ones that I came up with. There have been plenty of companies that have reached out to me to review products, and I've reviewed some of them. But these companies are ones that I went and sought out and wanted to work with based on their reputation, the products that they deliver, and the customer service that backs them all up. So hopefully that clarifies the situation. You can still count on these reviews being 100% non-biased. My integrity is not up for sale, and I'm never going to be dishonest on a review under any circumstance. So hopefully that clarifies it. Until the next one, guys, as always, clear skies.